When you aimed for my name, you accidentally aimed at my ignition. Now listen, my dear chosen ones. Walk in here like you already know what time it is. Because you didn't just make it through. You outlasted a whole season of people trying to write you off, trying to shrink you, trying to turn you into a footnote in a story you were born to headline. They called you naive. They called you too much. They called you nothing. And the funniest part, none of it stuck. Not because you argued back, not because you begged for respect, but because you kept moving while they kept talking. And now the same mouths that tried to bury you are dry with confusion because you're rising in front of their faces like a sunrise they can't boycott. Here's the idiom they didn't understand. You can't keep a good one down. And chosen ones, you're not just good. You're rare. You're built different. You're the kind of person life tried to crack open and ended up turning into a weapon of light. You've felt it, haven't you? That shift, that subtle but undeniable change in how rooms respond to you. People don't greet you the same. They don't talk over you like they used to. Even the ones who swear they don't care watch you like a thief watching a locked door, and you might be wondering, why are they acting weird now? Because your presence became a receipt, because your glow became evidence, because your silence became a verdict. You didn't have to expose anyone. Your elevation is doing the exposing for you. Let me say it the way it needs to be said. They're not confused by your looks. They're confused by your energy. Because attractiveness isn't just skin, it's gravity. It's the pull. It's the way your peace makes their chaos feel embarrassing. It's the way your clarity makes their manipulation look sloppy. It's the way your confidence makes their little games feel childish. You're walking proof that someone can be tested, mocked, underestimated, and still come out sharpened. And that scares people who only feel powerful when you feel small. You know what hits them the hardest? You didn't glow up with noise. You didn't announce a comeback. You didn't post speeches. You didn't beg for applause. You just kept building in private, like a blade being forged where nobody can see. And now you're stepping into the world with a different weight on you. Not loud, not desperate, just undeniable, like a storm that doesn't argue with the sky. It simply arrives. And yes, call them what they are. Enemies, doubters, spectators, energy leeches. Whatever name fits the role they played in your life. Because they did play a role. They thought they were the author, but they were just a plot device. They thought they were closing your chapter, but they were just proof you had a new one coming. They wanted you invisible because visibility requires accountability. And chosen ones, your rise is the kind that makes people pay debts they didn't know they owed. Maybe your mind is asking, why do they stare now? Because you became the thing they can't explain. You're the person who used to lower their voice to keep the room comfortable. And now the room has to adjust to your presence. You're the person who used to apologize for existing. And now your existence feels like a warning label. You're the person who used to chase people for clarity. And now your silence is the clarity. That's why they look away. That's why they fidget. That's why they suddenly respect you with nervous laughter and fake compliments. They're not admiring you, they're calculating you. Let me paint it with a metaphor they'll understand. They treated you like a candle, but you were always a wildfire. They thought they could blow you out with gossip, disrespect, distance and denial. Now they're watching you light up entire rooms without even trying. And the worst part for them? They can't recreate it. They can copy clothes, they can mimic confidence, they can rehearse lines, but they cannot copy a person who became powerful the hard way, through pressure, through loss, through rebuilding, through choosing themselves when nobody clapped. And chosen one, listen close. You might still be thinking, am I imagining this? Am I being dramatic? No. If anything, you're late to noticing it. People felt your change before you did. That's what throws them off. They can sense when someone stops needing them. They can sense when someone stops begging. They can sense when someone stops being available for disrespect. That's when the switch flips. That's when their behavior changes. That's when your name starts echoing in rooms you're not even in. Chosen ones, before we move any further, pause right here for a moment. If this message is hitting you, if you can feel the truth behind these words stirring something inside you, then support this space by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Not out of obligation, but because this energy deserves to keep moving. Every like pushes this message to someone who needs it. Every subscription helps us keep creating content that awakens confidence, clarity, and strength. This isn't just motivation, it's transformation. Your support fuels the effort behind bringing you powerful, life-changing, high-energy messages like this. Stay connected, stay aligned. So if you've been wondering why you suddenly feel more intense, more selective, more too aware, good. That's not bitterness, that's calibration. That's your standards finally matching your value. That's your energy getting upgraded to a level where the old version of you can't even breathe. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be unmistakable. And if you can feel this message hitting exactly where it needs to hit, chosen ones, make it real. Tap that like button, subscribe, and drop 777 in the comments as your signal that you're done shrinking for people who never grew. Because from here on out, you're not chasing attention. You're becoming the kind of presence nobody can ignore. And before we go any further, chosen one, pause right here. If this message feels uncomfortably accurate, if it feels like it's describing changes you've been noticing but couldn't explain, then this space is for you. Support this movement by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, not just for us, but so this energy keeps reaching the ones who need it most. Drop 77 in the comments as a signal that you recognize the shift happening within you. This isn't coincidence. This isn't random. And now, let's move step by step, because if you're truly chosen, you'll recognize every sign we're about to uncover. Number 1. The moment you stopped making yourself smaller to keep others comfortable. You were never too much. They were just too small to hold you. They didn't try to break you because you were weak. They tried because you were uncontainable. Now listen closely, my dear chosen ones. This is where it begins. This is the line you stop crossing backward. This is the moment you finally understand that shrinking yourself was never humility. It was survival in rooms that never deserved you. They called you too much, too loud, too intense, too ambitious, too emotional, too different. But what they really meant was, you make us uncomfortable because you remind us of everything we refuse to become. Let's hit them with the truth they tried to bury. They didn't try to humble you because you were wrong. They tried to humble you because your presence exposed their performance. You didn't threaten them by doing anything loud. You threatened them by being real, by being awake, by having depth in a world addicted to surface-level noise. And chosen ones, nothing scares insecure people more than someone who doesn't need permission to exist fully. Think about it. Every insult, every joke at your expense, every time they told you to calm down or be realistic, that wasn't advice. That was fear in disguise. That was panic dressed up as concern. Because if you rose, if you stopped shrinking, if you stopped apologizing, then they'd have to face the uncomfortable truth that they never had the courage you had, and they weren't ready for that mirror. So they tried to fold you. They pushed you into corners. They made you feel dramatic for caring deeply. They made you feel arrogant for knowing your worth. They made you feel crazy for noticing patterns they hoped you'd ignore. And for a while, maybe it worked. Maybe you dimmed your light just enough to survive. Maybe you lowered your voice. Maybe you second-guessed yourself. Maybe you begged to be seen by people who only valued you when you were quiet. But here's the part that destroys their narrative. You didn't stay there. Chosen ones, you outgrew rooms you once prayed to enter. And that's the part that hurts them the most. You were never meant to be background noise in someone else's story. You weren't born to be an accessory to someone else's ego. You were built to lead, to influence, to shift atmospheres, even when you didn't know you were doing it. And now look at the pattern. They tried to ignore you. Now they can't stop watching. They tried to walk away. Now they circle back pretending it was bad timing. They tried to make you doubt yourself. Now they're the ones questioning everything. They study you like a problem they can't solve. They check on you in silence. They mention your name when you're not in the room. Because your growth didn't just elevate you, it exposed them. You might be asking yourself right now, why did they hate when I played big? Why did my peace bother them? Why does my confidence trigger people? Here's the answer. Your rise forced them to confront their stagnation. Your calm showed them their chaos. Your clarity exposed their confusion. Your self-respect highlighted the places they compromised themselves. You became the mirror they didn't ask for, but desperately needed. And mirrors make liars nervous. And notice this, you didn't fight them. You didn't argue. You didn't clap back. You didn't expose anyone publicly. You didn't need to. Your growth did the talking. Your silence did the damage. Your presence walked into rooms and shifted the energy without saying a word. That's real power. That's when people get quiet. Not because there's peace, but because there's fear. Fear that they no longer have access to you. Fear that they can't reach you the way they used to. Chosen ones, let's be honest. You're attractive in a way they can't replicate, not with clothes, not with status, not with fake confidence or borrowed personalities. You're attractive because your energy is clean, because you carry pain like armor and wisdom like a blade, because you survived things that should have folded you, and instead they shaped you. People feel that when you walk by. They feel it in your stillness. They feel it in your restraint. They feel it in your refusal to react. Think back to the nights you cried alone, the moments you questioned your worth, the times you felt misunderstood, overlooked, underestimated. Those moments didn't weaken you. They sculpted you. While they were laughing, you were learning. While they were distracting themselves, you were becoming. While they were performing, you were evolving. And now you're the plot twist they never prepared for. You're not glowing because you changed your appearance. You're glowing because you stopped betraying yourself. You stopped apologizing for your depth. You stopped shrinking your dreams. You stopped asking people for space and started taking it. And now your presence hits like truth. Heavy, grounded, unavoidable. So step out of that small box they tried to trap you in. Step into the space that always belonged to you, because you were never meant to play small chosen ones. You don't chase attention anymore. You don't ask to be seen. You command reality just by standing in your truth. And trust me, they feel it. Every single one of them. Number 2. When you became the one, variable they can't control or predict. You're no longer predictable. You're the storm that rewrites the forecast. They were comfortable when they thought they knew your limits. Now they panic because you erased the map. My dear chosen ones, this is where it becomes undeniable. This is the phase where you stop fitting into their expectations and start dismantling them without effort. They wanted you predictable, manageable, easy to read, easy to categorize. They were fine with you as long as they believed they knew your next move. But something shifted, quietly, internally. And now they're unsettled because you no longer move on a script they helped write. Funny how they once labeled you too emotional, yet now they're the ones shaking when you enter a room. Funny how they tried to study you, analyze you, figure you out like a book, only to realize you became an entirely new language. They mocked your silence, not understanding it wasn't emptiness. It was pressure building. It was power consolidating. It was restraint forming muscle. Chosen ones, imagine this clearly. The same people who once treated you like a backup plan, an option, a convenience, now pause when you walk in. Conversations falter, energy shifts. There's a weight in the air they can't name. You haven't spoken yet, but you've already announced yourself. That's not arrogance. That's presence. You used to shrink around them, careful not to take up too much space, worried about being misunderstood. Now they're the ones shrinking because you finally stopped folding. You didn't become the villain. They just realized you were never meant to be the side character. You are the plot twist they didn't prepare for, the force that rewrote the story without asking permission. And yes, your mind might still ask the questions. Why do they act strange now? Why do people who once ignored me suddenly notice me? Why does my presence make them uncomfortable? Here's the truth they don't want, said out loud. Your energy evolved, and their masks didn't. You stopped chasing approval, and that stripped them bare. In a world built on performances, you walked in without a costume, and authenticity is dangerous to people who survive by pretending. Imagine a room full of actors rehearsing roles they barely believe in. Then you enter. No mask, no script, no performance. Just depth. Just grounded certainty. Just the calm awareness of someone who finally knows who they are. That kind of presence can't be competed with, it can't be predicted, it can't be manipulated. And here's the part they don't understand. You're not the storm that destroys, you're the storm that reveals. You used to beg for clarity. Now your silence is the clarity. You used to chase closure. Now your glow is the closure. You used to overthink every step. Now they overthink you. That's evolution. That's the power dynamic flipping so smoothly you didn't even notice when it happened. One day, you just woke up different. You stood different. You breathed different. And suddenly, the world adjusted around you. They'll say you changed. They'll call you distant, cold, difficult, intimidating. Let's correct that. This isn't distance. It's depth. This isn't coldness. It's clarity. This isn't arrogance. It's awareness. And chosen ones, deep souls, have always frightened shallow minds. Always. Think of the ocean. Shallow waters are loud, chaotic, restless. But the deeper you go, the quieter it becomes. That's you now. Depth over noise, peace over approval, awareness over attention. You're not distant. You're selective. You're not quiet. You're observing. You're not detached. You're protecting your energy from people who never earned access to it. And here's a truth most people won't admit. They miss the older version of you because that version didn't know their own power. That version tolerated disrespect. That version explained themselves endlessly. That version gave too much and asked for too little. This version, the one listening right now, is different. This version is aligned. This version is attractive for real. This version cuts through illusions like sunlight through fog. You didn't glow up. You grew through. Anyone can change the outside. Anyone can copy a style, mimic confidence, fake happiness. But not everyone survives the fire and comes back sharper. Your magnetism wasn't handed to you. It was forged in quiet rooms, in long nights, in moments where pain tried to break you and instead refined you. While they were laughing, you were learning. While they were distracted, you were becoming. Now they don't know how to handle you. How do you predict someone who stopped needing approval? How do you control someone who sees through patterns? They call you different like it's an insult, but it's recognition. They don't feel your peace. They feel their guilt. They don't sense your glow. They sense their lack. And chosen ones, that's why your energy feels heavier now, stronger, denser, because you stepped into a phase where your purpose is protected more than people's comfort. What no longer aligns gets removed. What blocks you gets exposed. That's why your presence hits differently. You're no longer reacting to noise. You're above it, ahead of it. You are the storm they can't forecast, the presence they can't copy, the mystery they can't decode. And the part that scares them most? You don't need to explain yourself anymore. Your existence is the explanation. Your silence is the evidence. Your growth is the answer. You've become the storm they can't outrun, and they know it. Number 3. The shift where you stopped chasing approval and started setting the tone. You don't run after respect. You set the pace and make it follow. They mocked your honesty until they realized it was the mirror exposing everything they were hiding. Listen closely, chosen ones. This is where the power dynamic fully flips. This is where you stop mistaking silence for weakness and start recognizing it as authority. Real doesn't chase. Real doesn't beg. Real doesn't audition for approval. Real commands without raising its voice. And the reason they called you too real for so long is simple. Honesty is unbearable to people who survive by pretending. You were never magnetic because you tried to be impressive. You became magnetic the moment you stopped playing along with games you never believed in. While the world twisted itself into shapes it didn't even recognize anymore, you stayed solid. While others hid behind filters, fake confidence, borrowed opinions, recycled personalities, and loud performances, you chose something far more dangerous. You chose to be yourself. And chosen ones, nothing disrupts a room faster than someone who doesn't need to perform. Think about it. People who rely on masks panic when someone walks in without one. People who live off approval don't know how to act around someone who doesn't ask for it. That's why your presence feels louder now, even when you're silent. You're not trying to dominate attention, but attention finds you anyway. Because authenticity has weight. It bends the room. It forces reactions. Picture a masquerade party. Everyone comfortable. Everyone blending in. Everyone protected by costumes that make them feel important. And then you walk in. No mask, no script, no rehearsed lines. Just presence. Just clarity. Just truth standing upright. The room doesn't applaud. It stiffens. Not because you're threatening, but because authenticity burns through illusions the way light burns through fog. Suddenly, people don't know which role to play anymore. That's what you do now without effort. There was a time you worried about fitting in. You studied reactions. You softened edges. You edited yourself mid-sentence. You convinced yourself that belonging required shrinking. But chosen ones, fitting in, started to feel like suffocating, like folding yourself into a shape that never matched your frame. And one day, without drama, without announcement, you stopped. You didn't rebel. You didn't explain. You simply refused to keep abandoning yourself. And look what happened. You went from too much to how do you do that? You went from weird to I wish I had that kind of courage. You went from outsider to blueprint, because realness always becomes the reference point once the noise fades. Trends expire, performances collapse, but authenticity, it outlives them all. Now people admire you in public because standing near you makes them look honest. But in private, they envy you because you embody something they keep postponing: integrity. You remind them of the version of themselves they abandoned to be liked, and that quiet reminder eats at people who built their identity on approval. You might be asking yourself, why do people stare at me differently now? Or, why do they copy my vibe but never acknowledge it? Here's the truth they won't say out loud. They can imitate your words, but not your alignment. They can borrow your style, but not your presence. They can perform confidence, but they cannot embody it. Because embodiment comes from lived truth, not observation. Your existence triggers awareness without permission. You don't try to wake people up. You don't preach. You don't correct. You just stand there, grounded, unbothered, self-defined, and that alone disrupts shallow patterns. That's why some people suddenly act awkward around you. That's why others become competitive. That's why a few disappear altogether. When you stop playing along, the game collapses. And chosen ones, don't misunderstand this shift. You're not cold, you're clear, you're not distant, you're selective, you're not arrogant, you're anchored. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It settles. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't chase applause. It doesn't run after respect. It sets a standard and lets everything else adjust. You didn't survive everything you went through just to blend into spaces that never deserved you. You didn't endure pressure, loss, and rebuilding to end up invisible. You radiate now because you're real. You stand out because you stopped diluting yourself. You're not competing with anyone anymore, and that's exactly why you're winning. Authenticity doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It doesn't compete. It just exists. And in a world addicted to pretending, that makes you undeniable. Chosen ones, remember this. When you stop chasing, everything that matters starts moving toward you. Quietly, permanently. Number 4. Why your presence now? Forces people to reveal who they really are. Your presence exposes everything they hid. And let's be clear, chosen ones, they don't act strange around you. They act strange around the truth you force them to face the moment you enter a space. You're not walking in trying to impress, dominate, or announce yourself. You're not performing. You're not posturing. And that's exactly why the room glitches when you show up. Conversations stumble. Laughter feels forced. Energy shifts in ways people can't explain. That isn't attention. That's collision. That's what happens when authenticity crashes into pretense at full speed. Chosen ones, your presence works like a flashlight in a dark room. You don't turn it on deliberately. It's just on. And suddenly, everything people were hiding becomes visible. The fake smiles, the carefully rehearsed personalities, the quiet guilt, the motives they never planned to reveal. You're not interrogating anyone. You're not asking questions. You're simply existing as yourself. And that's enough to make masks feel heavy and lies feel unstable. Realness has side effects, and one of them is exposure. Imagine walking into a place where everyone has been lying to themselves for years, convincing themselves that comfort is the same as honesty. Then you arrive calm, grounded, unshaken. No performance, no pretending, no need for validation, just presence, just clarity, just someone who knows who they are. Of course they don't know how to act around you. Of course the energy shifts. People who spend their lives running from themselves can't stand still in front of someone who stands firmly in their own identity. You didn't become healing because you tried to be. You didn't wake up one day deciding to fix people. You became healing because you stopped being fake, because you stopped betraying yourself to fit into rooms that thrived on denial. And here's the part most people don't understand. Healing doesn't feel like comfort at first. It doesn't feel like a hug. It feels like a burn. It feels like a spotlight on the parts people buried. It feels like pressure on wounds they never wanted to acknowledge. That's why your presence gets mixed reactions. Some people are drawn to you instantly. They feel safe, seen, understood. Others feel irritated, defensive, unsettled. Both reactions are information. Both reactions prove you're doing something right. You're not just light chosen ones. You're a mirror. And mirrors don't create flaws. They reveal what's already there. You don't fix people. You show them themselves. You don't chase love. You reflect it. You don't expose weakness. You expose dishonesty. Maybe you've asked yourself, why do some people open up to me so fast while others seem threatened for no reason? The answer is simple. Truth has two effects. It frees the honest and frightens the fake. People who have nothing to hide feel relief around you. People who built their identity on illusions feel exposed. Your energy doesn't attack them. It removes the hiding places they depended on. And that's terrifying to anyone who's been avoiding their own reflection. Chosen ones, you're not a trend. You're not a phase. You're not a personality type people can copy and discard. You're a reminder that truth still exists in a world addicted to pretending. Your presence disrupts because it's real. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need explanation. It simply arrives and lets everything else adjust or fall apart. And the wildest part of all? You didn't force this power. You didn't demand it. You didn't manipulate your way into it. You earned it by becoming aligned with who you actually are. You shed layers that weren't you. You dropped performances that drained you. You stopped lying to yourself. And now your presence does the talking before you ever say a word. Realness never goes out of style. It just becomes rare. And chosen one, you're rare enough to make entire rooms react. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because truth can't be ignored when it walks in. Number 5. The awareness that lets you read intentions before words are spoken. You see straight through the act. Chosen ones, let's speak plainly now. They call you too sensitive, but that word has always been a shield they hide behind. What they really mean is this: you notice what they desperately hoped would stay hidden. You're not guessing, you're not imagining things, you're not overthinking, you're seeing. And that alone is enough to make the wrong people uncomfortable. Because in a world full of masks, you're the one person who keeps noticing what's underneath. You don't just hear words, chosen ones. You hear what's missing between them. You don't just watch behavior, you feel intention. Someone can smile wide, laugh loud, speak politely, and still you catch the fracture in their tone. The pause that lingers too long. The joke that arrives a second late. The confidence that feels rehearsed instead of rooted. That's not coincidence. That's intuition sharpened by experience. That's perception built through survival. Every betrayal taught you to listen deeper. Every disappointment trained your awareness. Every time you were forced to read a room to stay safe, your senses refined themselves into something most people will never understand. Imagine sitting across from someone who has spent their entire life performing. Their personality is practiced. Their stories are polished. Their charm is calculated. They're used to controlling how they're seen. Then you look at them, not with suspicion, not with judgment, just with awareness. And suddenly they feel exposed. Not because you accused them of anything, but because you noticed. Your presence is like standing under bright light after years of hiding in dim rooms. You don't interrogate, you don't push. You simply see, and that's enough to make manipulators restless and performers uneasy. That's why they label you emotional. That's why they say you're intense. That's why they try to downplay your awareness. Because if they admitted the truth that you see clearly, they'd have to confront the fact that they've been hiding from themselves. Sensitivity isn't your weakness, chosen ones. It's your radar. It's your internal alarm system. You can sense lies wrapped in laughter. You can feel tension buried under silence. You can tell when someone's words don't match their energy. That isn't paranoia. That's pattern recognition. That's your nervous system remembering what your mind once tried to excuse. And here's the part that unsettles people the most. They start telling you things they never planned to say. Confessions slip out sideways. Secrets surface without warning. People open up mid-conversation and later wonder why they did. It's not because you asked the right questions. It's because something about you feels real, grounded, safe, unfiltered. You don't pressure people to be honest. You invite honesty simply by being present. And being truly seen, without judgment, without performance, is rare. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding that moment. You might wonder why people remember you even when you barely speak, why strangers open up to you within minutes, why your silence feels heavier than someone else's monologue. The answer is simple. Attraction isn't just appearance, it's depth. It's the feeling of being understood without translation. It's the sense that someone is actually listening, actually present, actually aware. And chosen ones, that kind of presence leaves a mark. You're unforgettable because you don't engage with the mask. You look past it, straight to the core, and that terrifies anyone who's built their identity on hiding. The ones who live by manipulation can't stand you. The ones who survive on charm can't control you. The ones who rely on confusion can't fog you, because your clarity disrupts their strategy. You don't play along, you don't miss what's obvious beneath the surface, and the moment they realize you can't be fooled, the power dynamic shifts. They either respect you, withdraw from you, or resent you. There's no middle ground. And here's what you need to understand, chosen ones. This awareness you carry is part of why you're becoming more attractive, not louder, not flashier, more magnetic. People feel that you see clearly, and clarity has weight. It makes shallow interactions uncomfortable. It makes fake confidence feel thin. It makes half-truths collapse under their own pressure. You don't chase people. You don't interrogate them. You simply stand there, fully present, and the truth starts leaking out on its own. So if they call you sensitive, let them. If they say you read too much into things, let them. Those labels are just defenses. Because the truth is this: you see through them like glass. And in a world addicted to pretending, that makes you powerful. Number 6. How simply being yourself turned you into a reflection. People avoid. You are the mirror they've spent years avoiding. And chosen ones understand this clearly from the start. They don't resent you for anything you did. They resent you for what you see. You didn't expose anyone. You didn't call anyone out. You didn't point fingers or tell stories. They exposed themselves the moment they stood too close to your truth. Your presence doesn't accuse, it reflects. And in a world where most people survive by pretending, reflection feels like an attack. Most people don't actually want to be understood. They want to be applauded. They want praise for a carefully edited version of themselves, a highlight reel, polished enough to hide the cracks. They want approval without accountability. And then you walk in, chosen one, calm, grounded, observant, and suddenly the performance stops working. You don't buy the act. You don't fall for the surface charm. You don't respond to the mask they rehearsed. You see the parts they buried, the potential they abandoned, the truths they keep running from. And that level of clarity makes you dangerous in a culture built on denial. Picture someone who's avoided mirrors their entire life. They've lived by shadows, angles, distractions. Then one day, without warning, they're forced to look straight at themselves. They flinch, they look away, they get angry, but not at their reflection, at the mirror. That's what happens around you. You are a mirror wrapped in skin. You don't need to say much. You don't need to confront. Your presence alone reflects honesty back at people who spent years hiding from it. Chosen ones. This is why some people feel exposed around you without you ever saying a word. You don't manipulate. You illuminate. You don't judge. You reveal. And the truth you reveal lands harder than insults ever could, because it's silent and undeniable. People can argue with words, but they can't argue with what they feel when they're around you. They sense what they've been avoiding. They feel the weight of their own unfinished growth. That's why they label you instead. Too deep, too intense, too serious. But those labels aren't about you. They're shields. Excuses they use to avoid admitting they never went beyond the surface. When they say you're intimidating, what they're really saying is, you see me clearly, and I don't like who I am yet. When they say you're distant, what they mean is, I can't perform around you. Your presence disrupts the illusion they worked so hard to maintain. Maybe you've asked yourself this quietly. Why do some people pull away even when I'm kind? Why does my energy unsettle certain people when I've done nothing wrong? Here's the answer, chosen one. Being around you forces people to confront the parts of themselves they've been sprinting away from. Their unhealed wounds, their broken promises to themselves, their wasted potential, their unspoken regrets. You don't cause the discomfort. You simply remove the distractions they use to avoid it. And this is important. You are not here to make anyone uncomfortable on purpose. You are not here to fix people. You are not here to rescue or awaken anyone who refuses to wake up. Your role is not to soften yourself so others can remain asleep. Your role is to stand in your truth so clearly that whoever is ready recognizes it, and whoever isn't removes themselves. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. Chosen ones, this is why you're unforgettable. Not because you shine the loudest, not because you demand attention, but because people feel seen around you in a way they're not used to. And being seen is terrifying for those who built their lives on hiding. You don't threaten them, you awaken them, and awakening is uncomfortable before it's liberating. Some people will thank you later in silence. Others will resent you forever for reminding them of who they could have been. So if people distance themselves, if conversations change, if energy shifts the moment you enter a room, don't question your worth. Don't dull your awareness. Don't apologize for your depth. What's happening isn't rejection, it's filtration. The ones who are ready for honesty lean closer. The ones addicted to illusion fall away. That's how it's supposed to work. Remember this, chosen ones, mirrors don't chase approval. They don't explain what they show. They simply reflect. And right now, your clarity is reflecting truths people spent years avoiding. That doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you necessary. Number 7. The silence that speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Your silence is the new warning label. Chosen ones, this is the stage where people finally realize access to you was never a right. It was a privilege they abused. They thought you pulling back was petty. They thought you were sulking. They thought you were playing games. But what actually happened shook their entire system. Your silence didn't punish them. It stopped feeding their chaos. And once the noise stopped, everything they were hiding started screaming back at them. You didn't suddenly become cold. You became precise. You didn't rewrite the rules to hurt anyone. You simply stopped letting people violate them. That's the part they can't process. Because for a long time, you were the one explaining yourself until your voice cracked. You were the one offering closure to people who created confusion. You were the one shrinking your truth so others wouldn't feel exposed, guilty, or uncomfortable. You were the one translating your pain into language they could digest. And now you've gone quiet. And that quiet says everything you used to beg them to understand. Chosen ones, your silence isn't empty. It's loaded. It carries clarity. It carries consequence. It carries self-respect. Imagine a door people used to walk through without knocking. They came and went. They crossed lines. They left messes. One day they return, reach for the handle, and it doesn't open. They knock. They jiggle the handle. They try old tricks. Nothing works. That's you. You didn't slam the door in anger. You simply changed the access code, and the people who never earned the key are now standing outside, confused, frustrated, exposed. Your energy no longer responds to manipulation. It doesn't react to guilt. It doesn't jump when someone pulls emotional shortcuts. And that terrifies people who were addicted to your old softness. They were comfortable with the version of you who explained too much, forgave too fast, and stayed accessible even when disrespected. This version of you? Silent, still, unavailable to nonsense. And that silence hits harder than any argument ever could. Chosen ones, your absence echoes. Not because you're trying to make a point, but because your presence was doing more emotional labor than anyone admitted. When you stopped responding, people were forced to sit with themselves, with their patterns, with their intentions, with the way they treated you. That's why they're restless now. That's why they replay conversations. That's why they feel uneasy. Your silence became a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They used to depend on your forgiveness like it was automatic, like no matter what they did, you'd reset the balance for them. Now that forgiveness has boundaries, Now it has standards. Now it has distance. And they don't know how to function without the emotional safety net you used to provide. They call it confusing. It's not. It's unfamiliar. Because they benefited from your lack of boundaries. They weren't confused back then. They were comfortable. Chosen ones, your clarity confronts people without you speaking. Your distance teaches lessons you never had to explain. Your peace exposes intentions people hoped would stay hidden. You're not bitter. You're aligned. You're not distant. You're selective. You're not rude. You're done letting people waste the parts of you that took years to rebuild. That's not cruelty. That's maturity. That's growth with teeth. And here's the part they really don't understand. The moment you stopped reacting, your presence became heavier, more grounded, more attractive in a way they can't describe. Because when someone no longer begs to be understood, they become undeniable. Your silence signals strength. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to convince you. And nothing unsettles manipulative or insecure people more than someone who refuses to explain their worth. Chosen ones, this is why people tread carefully around you now. This is why conversations change when you enter a room. This is why some people feel nostalgic, others defensive, others nervous. Your silence is a boundary wrapped in calm. It's a warning label without aggression. It says, handle with respect or don't handle at all. You didn't lose your voice. You mastered when to use it. You didn't disappear. You became unreachable to chaos. You didn't turn your back on people. You turned toward yourself. And now your boundaries speak louder than your words ever did. This is your new language, chosen ones, clear, quiet, unmistakable. Number 8. The internal switch that changed everything without you saying a word. You didn't just change, you lit the match. Chosen ones, listen closely. What's happening to you right now isn't a makeover, it's an ignition. They thought your glow was surface level, something temporary, something you could wash off or lose interest in. They thought it was makeup, lighting, confidence borrowed from somewhere else. But the moment they realized it wasn't fading, the moment they saw it surviving pressure, criticism, and time, something clicked in their minds. This wasn't decoration. This was damage control failing. This was the part of you they tried to break and couldn't. They copy your style now, your posture, your tone, the way you move. But here's what eats at them in silence. They can't copy what you went through. They want the shine without the fire. They want the results without the nights you questioned everything. They want the calm without the chaos that forced you to build it. They want the aesthetic of your glow, but not the war that forged it. And chosen ones, that's why, no matter how closely they study you, they never quite get it right. Something's missing. Something always feels hollow. Because what they're trying to imitate was earned, not assembled. You don't just look different now, you are different. And that's what confuses people. They keep trying to explain your change in shallow terms. New phase, new mindset, new vibe. Something trendy, something temporary, something they can wait out. But this isn't a phase, this is a point of no return. You didn't glow up, you woke up. Something inside you switched on that never existed before, and now you're operating from a place they've never been brave enough to visit. That's why the world around you feels off balance lately. People don't respond to you the same way. Conversations feel heavier, silence feels louder, eyes linger longer. You might be wondering, why does my presence feel stronger now? Why do people stare like they're trying to solve a puzzle? It's because you're no longer leaking energy. You're no longer fragmented. You're walking with clarity, and clarity has weight. It makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to feel their own confusion. Chosen ones, what happened to you didn't start on the outside. It started internally. You didn't adjust your appearance first. You adjusted your boundaries. You didn't change your look. You changed your standards. You didn't polish your image. You healed the parts of yourself that kept accepting less than you deserved. And once that happened, everything else followed naturally. That's why this glow feels different. It's not loud, it's grounded, it's not flashy, it's undeniable. Imagine walking out of the very fire that was meant to destroy you. The same fire people assumed would reduce you to nothing. Now imagine stepping out of it intact, calm, focused, glowing. Not because you weren't burned, but because the heat refined you. That's you. Your shine isn't beauty. It's survival turned into presence. It's heartbreak turned into discernment. It's pain turned into precision. Every tear you cried didn't weaken you. It polished you. Every betrayal didn't break you. It sharpened your awareness. Every loss didn't empty you. It realigned you with who you were always meant to be. You didn't suddenly become visible. People just finally noticed what was always there once the noise around you died down. And now they're watching closely, trying to decode you, studying you, measuring themselves against you. But here's the truth they won't admit. They can buy your clothes, but they can't buy your evolution. They can mimic your movements, but they can't replicate your healing. They can copy your confidence, but they'll never understand the pressure that built it. Your glow is purpose in motion. It's resilience made visible. It's proof that someone can walk through darkness and come back with depth instead of bitterness. You didn't evolve for attention. You evolved because staying the same was suffocating you. You didn't activate to impress anyone. You activated to survive and then to thrive. So let them stare, let them wonder, let them talk in circles trying to explain what they don't understand. They'll never find the source of your shine because it lives in places they've never dared to go, in the quiet rebuilds, in the private decisions, in the moments you chose yourself without witnesses. You're not here to be explained, chosen ones. You're here to be remembered. Number 9. When your energy started arriving before you did, your energy arrives before your body does. And that's the part they can't prepare for. Chosen ones, there was a time when you were treated like background noise. Easy to overlook, easy to replace, easy to talk over, interrupt, dismiss. People assumed your presence was optional. They assumed you'd stay small, stay polite, stay grateful for scraps of attention. But that version of you doesn't exist anymore, and the shift didn't happen loudly. It didn't come with announcements or explanations. It happened internally, and now before you even open your mouth, the room already knows something has changed. Watch closely what happens when you walk in now. Conversations stumble, laughter gets awkward, people glance up without meaning to. Some straighten their posture, some adjust their tone. Some suddenly go quiet, not because you're intimidating, not because you're trying to dominate, but because recognition has replaced familiarity. They feel it instantly. Your energy no longer moves at the level they're used to. And people always react when the power dynamic silently flips. You didn't force this. You didn't rehearse it. You didn't wake up one day and decide to act confident. You aligned into it by refusing to keep apologizing for who you are, by healing what needed healing, by cutting away what drained you, by choosing clarity over approval. And now your presence carries weight, not fake weight, not loud weight, not performative confidence, real weight, the kind that can't be copied by louder outfits, louder voices, or louder personalities. Think about the difference between a candle and a wildfire. A candle flickers, hoping to be noticed. A wildfire doesn't hope, it doesn't explain, it doesn't negotiate. It simply is. It changes the landscape just by existing. That's you now, chosen ones. Quiet power, silent authority. A presence that exposes illusions without lifting a finger. You don't try to be seen anymore, and that's exactly why you are. You used to second-guess your worth. You used to wonder if you were too much or not enough. You used to shrink to fit rooms that never expanded for you. But now your energy is grounded, solid, unshakable. Even people who don't like you can't deny you. They feel it in their body before their mind catches up. That's why they act cautious. That's why they choose their words more carefully. That's why some keep their distance while still watching. And maybe you've been asking yourself lately, why do people treat me differently now? Here's the answer. Your energy is no longer cheap. It's no longer predictable. It's no longer soft in the places they used to poke. You don't laugh at things that once disrespected you. You don't tolerate what you used to excuse. You don't over-explain. You don't chase comfort for others at the cost of yourself. And when someone loses access to the version of you they could manipulate, they feel it immediately. Your presence has become a truth serum. People can't hide around you anymore. Their motives slip. Their insecurities rise to the surface. Their masks crack without you saying a word. That's why some admire you from a distance and others feel unsettled. It's not personal, it's exposure. When someone stands firmly in who they are, it forces everyone else to confront who they're pretending to be. Chosen ones understand this clearly. You are becoming unforgettable, not because you're doing more, but because you stopped dimming. You stopped watering yourself down. You stopped trying to be digestible. Your silence now says more than your explanations ever did. Your confidence doesn't shout, it hums. Your aura naturally filters out what doesn't belong. Anything vibrating too low simply can't stay comfortable around you. And let this land deeply. Your rise wasn't about looking impressive. It was about becoming aligned with your own standards. You didn't elevate to attract attention. You elevated to lead with presence, to move with intention, to stand in rooms without bending. And now, anyone who steps into your space feels it instantly, before you speak, before you sit down, before you even look their way. This is what happens when a chosen one stops apologizing for their power. This is what happens when you outgrow the frequency of the past. Your energy enters first now, and once it does, nothing in the room stays the same. And as we come to the close, chosen ones, let this truth settle in. Nothing about what you're experiencing is random. The shift, the attention, the quiet reactions around you, it's all a response to who you've become. You didn't force it, you earned it. So if this message reflected your journey, support it by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with another chosen one who needs this reminder. Drop 77 in the comments as your signal that you recognize the change within you. Stay connected, stay grounded. This is only the beginning.